Hey y'all, it's Kate from the Literary Apothecary and welcome back to my channel.
Today I'm here to talk to you about a new release just released today. That is, of course, the Buffalo Hunter by Stephen Graham Jones. Now, I have so much to say about this book. A lot of what I have to say I can't say here because it's spoilers, but I'm going to try to frame all of my thoughts in spoiler-free thoughts. This is, of course, just out today. If you are a Stephen Graham Jones fan, you need to get this book. It is so good. This is a horror, supernatural, historical fiction, of course, indigenous tale. And I'm going to start this review a little bit differently, and I'm going to start it with a quote from the book. For me, this quote really exemplifies the way that Stephen Graham Jones uses history and the indigenous culture with the colonial culture and metaphors all in one. The quote is about halfway through the book. It does not give any spoilers for the book. It's just a really beautiful quote that really exemplifies the use of metaphors in Stephen Graham Jones' book. The quote says, "My writing hand is leaving smudges of pungent grease on this paper that make it opaque, admitting the previous page's words through into this one, which is emblematic of the past rising, pushing through, insisting on making itself apparent to all." And that quote just really exemplifies Stephen Graham Jones' writing. So my general thoughts about this book, honestly, I felt like I never be the same again after reading this book. This is not an easy book to read, both in content and style. This takes place in 1912 in Montana, out in the West, and it's about real events that happened. This massacre that happens in this book, which you'll hear about in the spoiler-free summary, really happened, and the U.S. government hides it under historical history. Stephen Graham Jones brings it to life in such vivid detail that, yes, it is hard to read, but it's so good. He writes it so well. It's so worth the read. Everyone should read this book, really. It's so emotionally haunting that I still think of this book a month after I finished reading it. And as I said before, its beautiful use of metaphors is just absolutely fantastic. Now, a spoiler-free summary for this book. A chilling historical horror novel set in the American West in 1912, following a Lutheran priest who transcribes the life of a vampire who haunts the fields of the Blackfeet Reservation looking for justice. A diary written in 1912 by a Lutheran pastor is discovered within a wall. What it unveils is a slow massacre, a chain of events that go back to 217 Blackfeet dead. We get three main point of views here. Goodstab, which is the Blackfeet representative. He's the one that's really telling this main storyline. Arthur Buchanan, who is the Lutheran pastor that you heard about in that description, and Etsy, who is Arthur's, I believe, great-great-granddaughter. I'm not sure the generational there, but she is kind of our present day point of view. She's the one that gets this journal, diary, whatever you want to call it. This book, yes, this massacre really happened. You might have heard the word vampire in there. Yes, there are vampires, but they're not the main part of this story. And I went back and forth so many times on whether to include the fact that this does have vampires in it, because when I first came across that in the book, I was so pleasantly surprised. I totally forgot that I read in the descriptions that this was a vampire story, but it's not really a vampire story. The vampires play a minor role in my point of view in this story. There's a much bigger story at foot here than just the vampires. So let's get into our Call Pyre ratings, because as you can tell, I have so much to say. Our characters felt so real to me. Good Stab represented the Blackfeet tribe for me. I felt all of these characters at a very, very deep level. And Etsy's sarcasm got me through some really stressful days while reading this. Our atmosphere and our setting, no surprise here if you've read Stephen Graham Jones before, but this was spot on for me. The majority of this narration takes place in Montana and the West, and it felt like just like I imagined the American West to feel like in 1912. Our writing style, now this is where I have a lot to say because I made the possible mistake, depending on how you look at it, of looking at other people's reviews before I wrote my written review out, and I have a lot more to say about this in my written review, so if you are interested in what I have to say here, go check out my written review, which is of course linked down in the description below. A lot of people had a really hard time with Stephen Graham Jones' writing style in this because there are some things that he translates from the Blackfeet language into English. There are some things that he leaves up to the imagination, and then there are some things kind of in the middle that he gives us imagery to kind of get us to that understanding, but doesn't spell it out word for word for us or letter for letter. And a lot of people had a hard time with that. For me, I thought it made perfect sense for this book. It worked perfectly for me because it felt authentic, and Good Stab is the one that is telling this story, basically. He's telling it to Arthur, who is then writing it in his journal, and for me, at least, it wouldn't have felt authentic as a Blackfoot indigenous person telling this story if everything was in perfect English. That wouldn't have been authentic to me. I felt like we were translated what we absolutely needed to know. We were left to our own devices on what we should know with imagery and selected words, and everything else was left up to our imaginations. And I feel like for those people that want everything translated and left nothing to the imagination, A, that's a little bit lazy reading, and B, that feels a very colonial way of reading and kind of highlights some of Stephen Graham Jones' points for him there. Our plot, I did not see that ending coming. I had to skip right to that because I didn't see that coming at all, even though, as Stephen Graham Jones does, there were clues that were leading up to it. I didn't see it at all. I completely forgot about the clues by the time we got to the ending. The plot was so well done. It was so engaging and gripping, and let's just say, like, Good Stab was playing the long game here. Intrigue, I was absolutely intrigued throughout this whole book. Stephen Graham Jones knows how to wrap me right around his little writing finger and drag me along for the ride. I was there for the full of it. I couldn't stop thinking about this book even a month after finishing it, as I said before, and I still think about this book today. Logic, to me, it all made sense. Even though the ending left some people with questions and some people it raised even more questions, to me it all made sense, and I looked at it as Good Stab was out for his long-term revenge, and thinking of it in terms of that made it make sense to me. If that doesn't make sense to you, let me know in the comments below and we'll chat about it on the side. Enjoyment. This is 100% the incorrect word for this book. You can't really enjoy a book like this, but I did love everything about it. Yes, it was very hard to read, and it made me cry, and it made me sick to my stomach at times, but it also made me smile and laugh. Thank you, Etsy. It was so damn good. I still talk about it today, as you can see, and it was a book that I will go back and reread again and again and again. If you are a Stephen Graham Jones fan, a supernatural tales fan, and or a fan of indigenous tales, indigenous fiction, you will definitely want to pick this one up. If you want to see my full review for this book, including all the numbers and all that jazz, you can find that on Goodreads, which is linked down in the description below. And a big thank you to NetGalley and Simon & Schuster for providing the digital ARC for me. I already pre-ordered this book through Barnes & Noble, where I've got the blood red sprayed edges and it's a signed copy. I can't wait for that to come in to add it to my shelf. I think I need to start a Stephen Graham Jones shelf here because he is definitely now an auto-buy author for me, and he's gonna need his own space. If you were lucky enough to read this before publication with the ARC like I was, or you're watching this after publication, let me know in the description below, what did you think of this book? To me, I've only read 3 Stephen Graham Jones books now, but this is neck and neck with I Was a Teenage Slasher because I loved it so much. But let me know in the comments below, what did you think of it? As always, keep reading, and I love you all to the moon and back. Bye.